Well, you look amazing. And I'm like,
How do I look amazing?
it's funny because I know that you're like, you actually don't think so, but you do genuinely look amazing. And so it comes across as like a humble brag. How do I look amazing?
I'm not humble bragging. Hunkle bragging.
I know you're not, but it could come across that way for someone who doesn't know you
Yeah.
because you do look amazing. You know, I got to fix something real quick.
Okay. Mr. Perfectionist here. On some things.
On some things. It's like rock climbing, trying to
I know.
like
It's really bad in here.
checking around best place to plant my foot.
Anybody want a tour? Just kidding.
Mm-mm. No. So welcome to the podcast. We're in the pre-show right now.
Mhm.
Pre-show, and just hanging out. I got to remember not to put my hand on this thing because the camera and everything's attached to it. So.
Oh yeah, it makes it shake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. But yeah, we in the pre-show we kind of warm up a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and chat, get the vocals going, get the talking going,
You,
the words.
I guess they wouldn't be able to hear, but the kids might be little noisy steppers upstairs.
Yeah, kids are home from school today.
Who knows why?
It's a school holiday.
It's a winter break.
Yeah, winter break.
Because they didn't have 3 days off for an ice storm a week ago.
Yeah. I don't know, for some reason, I think this is wrong, but I feel like earlier in the school year, there was a break that wasn't the ice storm. That was also like 4 days, but maybe I'm not.
There might have been.
Maybe I'm misremembering.
Got a lot of 4-day weekends for some reason.
It's all good.
Yeah. It's just hard to get stuff done, when there are a lot of, I don't know, we should do something on that. Maybe we are. Just about having distractions at home.
Yeah.
What are we? Oh,
we've definitely talked before about interruptions to the normal
That's
routine,
true,
that kind of thing. But I'm sure there's some other angle in there because there's always something useful that comes out of that conversation when we have it.
Well, it seems like every time there are days off, there's something surprising. That's just like, oh, I didn't account for that. So.
What anything so far today?
I mean, one of the kids is really whiny, who's not normally whiny.
Yeah, he's like usually super chill, very like go with the flow, and
when the easy ones start being difficult, it feels like everything's falling apart.
Yeah, it's like
not that whiny is difficult, but he's been doing other things.
No, whiny is difficult. Look.
Whiny, I know, but no, I'm not saying a whiny child. I guess a whiny child could be a difficult child, but
so, well, I guess it depends on how you're defining it. But like, in my mind, someone who's whiny and needy and uncooperative, just takes more time.
It's
and
a lot
attention.
of energy.
And it's not that you want to give your time and attention, but those things kind of demand your time and attention, and they steal your time and attention away from other things or other people. And so I think that's the challenge, is like that would be a good thing to talk about, because you get used to, you're like, okay, you categorize the people in your life, and you're like,
people
okay,
are difficult to work
I know
with.
how much energy this person takes, and I know how much energy this person takes, and vice versa. And like, you want to spread it out evenly, but
the more difficult ones take more energy. Yeah.
And so when somebody has a bad day, or it's never like two of them talk and they're like, let's trade for the day. I'll be easy and you be the
Yeah.
difficult one. It's like,
Nope. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
We should get started.
Yeah, let's get started. We are going to jump into the episode today and talk about writing. Let's do it.
All right.
Hello and welcome to In the Boat with Ben and Rachel. I'm Ben.
And I'm Rachel.
And this podcast exists to address common creator struggles and provide weekly inspiration for your creator journey. Today's struggle is writing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is something that I have talked about, like I've complained a lot about struggling with writing to you. What's your relationship to writing?
I love writing. It comes very easily to me.
Yeah.
That sounds like I'm being overconfident or whatever, but I've never really had a problem with writing. So,
well, let me tell you my experience. And if you're listening to this, maybe you hear yourself writing. I'll start by saying this. Writing is something that, whether you're a person who actually writes books and you're doing that professionally, or maybe you're a content writer and you write blog articles and do research and that kind of thing, and it's your day in, day out. It's kind of the focal point of your work is writing. Or maybe you're an online creator and your focal point is something else, you know, whatever your niche is, or a specialty in a particular platform, or thought leadership of some kind. But writing in that case is a tool that you use to help you clarify and get your ideas out. And so that's the way I use writing. The focal point of my work is video production, and more generally it's helping creators. And so a lot of what I do focuses on those topics, but I use writing to make those topics make sense, to make sure that I'm communicating those things clearly. It saves me, as much as I complain about it, it does save me a lot of time, because when I write a script and I read from a teleprompter, I don't have to do nearly as much editing.
Yeah.
So writing is, for many creators, it's kind of a integral part of the creative process.
I would say for most creator, I would go so far as to say writing is one of the most important things that I want to teach our children too, because I don't think that's changing. It's necessary to be a good communicator, you know?
Yeah. And so writing, just in general, if you're a creator who doesn't write, who thinks, oh, writing's, you know, that's something that like writers do, but it actually can be a really great way to hone your voice. It can help you be a better communicator. It can help you clarify your ideas. It can help you work through your ideas. There's a lot of magic that happens with writing. But one of the most common struggles with writing is writer's block, getting to that blank page and feeling like, oh, I'm not sure what I want to say or how I want to say this. And then once you do start to put words on the page, it just feels like it's creeping out of you. Like you just can't, it's like this, I'm thinking of, for some reason, like those Play-Doh toys where you put the Play-Doh in and you squeeze the thing. And there's the one that has like the big opening and it's like really satisfying, and this big, like, you know, cylindrical thing comes out. And then there's the one that has like the tiny holes, and it's like you squeeze really hard, but it comes out really slowly, and it's just like a tiny, and that's what it, that's a weird metaphor or analogy, but that's what it feels like.
Speaking of good writing, I'm just kidding.
I didn't write anything about this beforehand.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That was the picture I got in my
Yeah.
head. But see, if I had sat down and I had written about this, I could have come up with a better metaphor, and it would have made more sense.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that's relevant for a lot of creators. And if you're someone who doesn't write, I highly encourage you, despite all of the ways that I'm complaining about it right now, I highly encourage you to start writing, in some way, shape, or form, not even necessarily something that you share publicly, but just for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But it's challenging,
Yeah.
And one of the things
Debbie.
Debbie says, I love that metaphor. Thank you. I think it works.
Yeah.
Kids know what Play-Doh is these days, right? So,
Oh, is this a podcast for kids? I'm
I
sorry.
mean, anybody under 30
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
is a kid.
Okay.
So one of the things that has really helped me lately, I've been kind of employing different strategies to rethink the way that I write, especially when I'm writing a first draft, to kind of reframe what that activity or what that task really is, because I've been thinking about it as like I'm putting words on a page, and they have to be like, as I'm putting them on there, they have to be phrased correctly. They have to be they have to make sense. They have to say exactly what I want them to say. They have to be ready to publish, because otherwise, like, I'm just faced with how bad the writing is. So I just, I used to struggle over every single sentence. And so framing it differently has helped a lot for me. And we'll get into a little bit of that. But before we do, I want to, so you say that writing it's always easy for you. It always has been. Can you think back to like your earliest days, and what were some of your first experiences with writing, and what were some of the struggles you faced, if any, and how did you overcome them?
I always loved writing. I've been writing since I was like 6 or 7, old enough to, form words on a page. I've been like telling stories and all of that. I think that probably the biggest struggle for me is, I write a lot for myself, but I also write a lot for other people. And so I think sometimes whenever things either go unnoticed or, it's more of a, like, once it's done and out in the world thing that the struggles are for me.
Yeah.
But
nothing in the earlier parts of the process.
I don't think so. I think I always just had people always complimented my writing, and I think that helped a lot with not feeling like I was blocked, And I feel like I've always been a better communicator on paper than I am even vocally.
That's really interesting. Because I'm going to come back to that. What were some of the, like, how old were you? Like, some of the earliest memories you have of people telling you that your writing was good?
I remember in 2nd grade, a teacher of mine, was it 2nd or 3rd? 3rd grade, Miss Fisher, told me that she loved the stories that I wrote, and she was going to let me write them in pen instead of pencil, which was a big deal in 3rd grade.
Wow.
And that was like a huge, I don't know, I mean, it's such a simple thing when you look at it from an adult's perspective, but like as a kid, the pen is more permanent than the pencil. And so it was like, oh, my stories have value, and now I get to write them in pen,
Well, and there's a lot of things in that. There's kind of an expression of trust.
Yeah.
And conveying that you are ready for the great responsibility of writing something in pen.
Yeah, it was a big responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I do want to say, along the way, there were also teachers and professors who said damaging things. But I think those early memories, and I had more people speaking into it than I did like speaking against it. And that helped a lot. So I guess maybe when it comes to like internal editors, I don't have as many of those because I was always more secure in that gift.
Yeah.
Maybe?
So
I don't know. It's hard for me to like figure out why is it. I mean, looking at it from where I am now, where I spend 5 or 6 hours a day just writing. And when you do that, you know, I've already put in my 10,000 hours of practice that, you know, is the whole standard for excellence and being good at what you do and stuff. And so it's hard for me to think back to those times when maybe it didn't come as easily, you know?
Well, I want to park a little bit on some of the praise you received early on. Was there anything that you remember doing or thinking specifically that helped you kind of internalize those messages, or was it something that just kind of happened more naturally?
I think it just happened more naturally.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had to write a lot for school back in those days. I think they still do have to write a lot. So when you get back papers constantly where the teacher's like, great job, I love the story, you know, it's like you naturally internalize over the course of 12 years, I must be kind of good at this, you know?
Yeah. So you get praise throughout your, you know, childhood, early school years up into middle school, high school. Was there kind of a first time or maybe one of the first times that really stands out to you when you received your first kind of criticism of your writing? Yeah, it was in college.
Creative writing class.
So it wasn't until college. Mm-hmm. Okay. So even in high school, like nobody was like, okay, you really need to work on this, or no. Okay.
Oh, that's terrible. You're making me sound awful.
No, I'm not. I'm just fascinated.
Yeah.
Okay. So college.
I had some really great teachers. So.
And I think I know the answer to this. But how do you remember receiving that criticism?
I was pissed off.
Okay. I'm going to stop you right there. So that tells me.
Sorry, is that a bad word?
No, it's okay. All right. If I was trying my best and, you know, I had written something, gosh, even in high school, but like, yeah, in college, and somebody said something critical about my work, I would have felt, I don't think anger is the emotion I would have gone to. It would have been more like things like despair, discouragement, you know, those kinds of things.
Well, his criticism was not constructive either. It was more like, your poetry is melodramatic and I think you should stick with something else. Yeah. And I was like, okay, my first published book is a novel in verse. I'm going to send it to you.
Do you remember who that teacher?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I still know his name. Yeah, he went on the shit list. I'm just kidding. He shows up in books as villains.
I think this is the first time I'm actually going to have to bleep something out for the show.
Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, I know he's listening to this podcast, so that book is coming your way.
No, I actually can't. I looked it was at Texas State University, and I couldn't find him on the faculty list because I really was going to send him a copy of the book, but it's probably better that I couldn't find him on the list.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's really interesting. So I would first say that I think your experience is,
it's probably unique,
exceptional, unique, very uncommon. I think most people, even doing what they feel like is their best work, don't receive enough affirmation to internalize the idea. And this is what I think you had, is this idea that writing was a part of your identity, is that you are a writer.
Well, I think especially when it's something that feels hard to you and that you don't particularly enjoy, it can be even more despairing to get that, even constructive criticism, you know,
Yeah.
if you're trying your best and there's still more that, you know, it's hard to hear those things when you feel like you've given it your all and it felt like it was, you know, pulling teeth to try to get words on the page, you know?
Yeah. So I want to kind of distill some of the lessons from your experience that we can kind of pull from. And so affirmation, writing as an identity
I think
versus,
anytime that you give constructive criticism, I need to say this. Anytime
yeah.
you give constructive criticism, you should start with a lot of positives
Yeah. I mean,
and then go into how they can improve.
everybody naturally pulls out the negative messages and
So,
has a much easier time internalizing those than the positive ones.
yeah.
Yeah. So, affirmation of your work, identifying as a writer, and then there's something that you just described that I think is really important, and it's this idea that when you do something that feels not necessarily like it's not challenging at all, but it feels easy. For a lot of people, when it comes to writing, that's not true. They would say, no, writing just feels hard. It feels hard every time. And some people, I think, do have a natural gift. And I hate simplifying it to something like that because I don't think it really is that simple.
Yeah, it's gift and practice, and
I think there are some personalities that are maybe, for example, I wonder if people with ADHD, just because they have a more difficult time concentrating, don't have as much patience. And
I think they just have to do it differently. I know a lot of writers who are published authors who have ADHD, and they've just learned to, you know, they have to work on multiple projects at multiple times and that kind of thing.
But what I'm trying to get at is, if throughout your childhood, throughout your young adulthood, it's always been a struggle, it's easy to believe that, oh, I'm just not good at this.
Right, which is not true.
And when you do struggle to do something, and when something feels hard, you're less likely to practice it consistently. You're more likely to believe that it's not something that you can think of as an identity. You're less likely to accept or even, you know, self-affirm how good your writing actually is. But like you're taking out all of the things that actually make writing easier. And so, like, in my experience, especially over the last 3 years, I've been writing every single week, just thousands of words. And you know, 3 years is a long time, but it's also a relatively short time. But I'd say it feels like 25% easier than it used to.
Yeah.
At least, you know. And but that's pretty significant for someone who 3 years ago, if you had asked me, hey Ben, are you a good writer? I mean, gosh, if you'd asked me 3 months ago, I still would have said, no, I'm not a great writer.
Yeah.
But something happened that changed that I'll talk about in a second.
Yeah. I want to plug here too that I journal every single day, and that's a place where you don't have to write well, but you just write. You know, you write about your life, you write about your worries, all of those things. And I mean, I tell kids this when I go visit schools and stuff. It's just such a valuable practice to have, and something that can even bolster your confidence as a writer, even if you like never share it or anything like that. But just the act of, you know, writing those things, however you want to do. I write on mine longhand, but I know some authors who do it, you know, on the computer. Some kids who do their journal. Remember Doogie Howser, that old show where he'd do his journal on the computer.
And that counts as practice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So when before I started working for Podia, I was making YouTube videos for my own channel, and I was doing, like, I had a blog. I was doing a little bit of writing. It was just kind of like a little bit here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I always thought about it was, it's this thing that I have to do from time to time in order to put my creative work, in order to put my thoughts out into the world. It's just something that I have to do, but it's not something that I'm good at. Like, the things I'm good at are more like video, like visual stuff. Those are the things that I'm good at. But like writing is just, it's this necessary thing that I have to do. It's kind of the way I think about a lot of other things. I think I'm not good at administrative stuff. I'm not good at organizational stuff. I'm not good at, and
it's a story you tell yourself.
Yeah. So, and it's a story that I've just believed for a really long time. And recently I was kind of venting a little bit, talking about some of the things that I was frustrated with and having, kind of struggling with and stuff like that to my boss. And I did mention, like, yeah, writing is like I've said this so many times, like writing is my biggest bottleneck.
Yeah.
In my whole process. Like, writing is the thing that stops me in my tracks. And it's because I feel like I'm not good at it. I feel like, I'm just like, I'm really struggling just to do the best I can to get the words on the page. But like, thankfully, I'm not writing for the blog, like I'm writing for video. So it's a different thing. And she kind of like gave a puzzled look and said, "Oh, I think your writing is really good." This is a person who's, in charge of the content, has a long history of writing content. And so there was some weight behind what she said, and suddenly I was like, I don't think I've ever given my writing to someone and asked them for their honest feedback about, like, is this any good?
Yeah.
Am I a good communicator? Like, I'm sure grammatically, like, I need a lot of work, but as far as like communicating ideas and the structure of my writing and like those kinds of things, here I was being told, probably for the first time ever, that my writing is good.
Oh, wow. That's so sad.
Yeah. And it was amazing because,
who were
like,
your teachers? My gosh.
Well, no, that's the thing. It's like, you can go through your entire school career and never hear that your writing is good, but also never hear that it's bad.
Yeah.
And it's like,
so then you have to form your own opinion.
Yeah, you form your own opinion. And if you have a hard time, if you get stuck a lot, if you feel like it's hard to communicate through writing, you probably don't think you're a good writer.
Yeah.
But that belief also, I think it becomes this negative spiral. I think that belief also slows you down. I think it keeps ideas from flowing as freely because you think, I'm really bad at this, so I need to put in a lot of effort to make something mediocre.
Yeah.
And who wants to do that?
Yeah.
But if your writing is good, then it's like, well, I'm going to do more of it then.
Yeah.
It just changes everything, the way that you think about your writing.
Yeah.
Now I guess you got to be careful with that. Like, if you're like, oh, maybe I don't know whether or not my writing is good, and you show it to the wrong person.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's okay, this part was, like,
there's
somebody
a lot
who
of,
doesn't.
I know this because I'm in the writing business, but there's a lot of ego involved in writing. And if you do show it to the wrong person, it could be completely not even your writing, but their issue that gives you terrible feedback, you know? So.
Yeah. So maybe find somebody encouraging.
Yeah.
That's, this is all kind of on the belief and identity side of things. But what that did for me also is it kind of, it shifted my mindset a little bit to where now I think of myself as a writer. I'm still primarily a video person, but like when I sit down to write, I'm not doing that as a video person trying to write a script. I'm like, no, I'm a writer. This is one of the ways that I communicate, and I've been working at it for a long time, and I'm actually good at it.
Yeah.
And so, excuse me. So like reinforcing those ideas really helps me a lot.
Yeah.
And because of how much writing I've had to do over the past 3 years, I've had to put in a lot of reps, and I've had to learn some things too. I've had to be intentional about improving. And so that's also a big part of it. And I think I was selling myself short based on the amount of work that I've done over the past few years.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But that's without getting into some of the more tactical things you can do to make it a little bit easier when you sit down to the blank page.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So this is the stuff that I really wanted to get into with you, because I was describing earlier that, feeling like as you're writing things, you're trying to make it perfect and stuff like that. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about that part of the writing process.
I've told you this so many times, but I never get anything perfect the first time out. So what I always tell writers and kids who are writing and stuff is that you just get your stuff on the page. Like I have, get that first draft down. I have notebooks with little notes to myself that say something like this in parentheses. Or like if I can't think of a name for something, I'll just put in capital letters name, because I don't have to know all of that the first time that I put everything down on paper, and it's the same thing. I was thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking about some of the writing that I hate most is like promotional writing and book descriptions and stuff. And I even employ this with those to make it easier. I'll write something down that describes the book, or that, communicates what I'm trying to communicate. And none of it is perfect. It's like some of it is really messy. There are typos, but I do a stream of consciousness writing. And then I go back, and however many drafts it takes, sometimes it only takes 2, sometimes it takes 15, to perfect it. So that's my biggest hack, I feel like. And when writers are talking about feeling writer's block, I think a lot of it comes down to the feeling that you had, where it has to come out perfect the first time. And it's hard because, we pick up books and we read them and they're perfect and they're so good, but that is not how they start. And I don't know that I would ever let anybody read one of my first drafts. So, because it's so different than the book that actually is published. And my blogs, when I've written the first draft, it's so different than the draft that is published on my website,
So what you're really doing, and what I think a lot of people have a hard time doing when they sit down to the page, is thinking about that first draft and the final draft as 2 completely different tasks. And that was a mistake I made for a long time. Like when I sat down to write a script, I thought, okay, this is the writing the script.
The draft.
Yeah, this is the writing the script part of the process, and it's a singular thing. And from the blank page to having a script that's ready to go is like, it represents one line on my task list. But it's really like writing that first draft, maybe even purposefully is a good way to think about it. Like purposefully writing a bad first draft. Like how terrible can I make this thing?
It's just getting all your ideas down on paper.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is.
I really like the idea of, and you kind of hinted at this in the way that you were describing it, but placeholder text.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that, especially writing like content,
you have to do research and stuff.
That cites any statistics or facts.
Just put a little note that's like, look this up.
But even things like, oh, I'd like to have some kind of clever or interesting metaphor.
Oh, I do that too. I'm like, clever joke
like
here.
Yeah. So
on my draft, because it's not time for that yet, you know?
There are two different parts of your brain, if it helps to think about it that way. There's the part that, you know, is making all of those connections and wants to do something creative and witty and is really thinking about the end experience. Like the person reading this, I want them to have a good experience. I want it to be clever and interesting and funny or, you know, whatever, or inspiring. We have a person coming into the studio. Just a moment. Hello.
I forgot.
Okay.
Oh, it's okay. Is there something you needed or?
Yeah, I just wanted to grab my roller weights.
Okay, go for it.
Sorry.
Gosh, I'm just kidding.
Love you.
Love you too.
Love you too.
Me and Jose are gonna go to the park.
Okay, bring your phone.
I will.
Okay.
No, I can't remember where
No,
you were.
I've got it.
Okay.
So I want it to be clever, interesting, funny, inspiring, and that part of your brain has the expectation that what ends up on the page is going to be those things. There's another part of your brain that has the basic idea that you're trying to communicate and is responsible for the mechanical sort of process of just putting words on a page. And it doesn't have the clever ideas. It doesn't have the interesting metaphors. It doesn't have the jokes. It doesn't have the statistics or the facts. It doesn't have any of that stuff. And so if you think about it, like this part of your brain is like, this is going to be amazing. I want it to be so cool and interesting. And this part of your brain is like, for those of you who are just listening, I'm like holding up two different brains basically, or two different parts of the brain. So this part of your brain's like, okay, I'm just going to put words on the page. And it's trying to do that. And then the part of your brain that wants it to be cool and stuff is like, wait, stop. There needs to be something there. Stop. Don't go any further. We got to stop and figure this out. And it completely overrides what the part of your brain that just wants to put words on the page is trying to do. And by telling the part of your brain that wants it to be interesting, you'll get your turn. I need to do this thing. I will make notes along the way so that we won't forget anything. I promise. It's going to be fine. We'll make notes along the way, and then you get your turn next.
Yeah.
Thinking about it that way just helps me a lot, because then I have the freedom to just write whatever comes out, and it can be bad. It is bad often.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that part of my brain that is good at writing and good at communicating isn't involved in that process.
Yeah.
So, and the two, you know, over time, the two start to work together a little bit. They get better.
Right.
They get friendlier with each other.
Yeah.
But that takes a long time.
It's a lot of practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's one of the most valuable things we can do. And when people talk about writer's block, I'm always like, I feel like that's more of a psychological thing than anything else. Like it's not that you can't write, and it's not that you don't have ideas. It's that you're trying to make it perfect the first time around. And what I learned this when I was a journalist, and somebody from the Poynter Institute came, because I remember having journals full of notes from, you know, interviews with subjects and stuff. And And one of the things that I told him is it always feels overwhelming to have all of those notes and not really know where to begin. And he was like, just write the story.
Mm-hmm.
And you can change anything. Like, it doesn't have to, he said, write it from beginning to end and then go back and redo it, and it saved me so much. That's what people think is, wow, if I have to do multiple drafts, it's going to take such a long time, but I guarantee it takes longer trying to get the words perfect the first time.
I have a question for you, but I want to share something that kind of speaks to that a little bit. I'm working on a huge project for Podia right now. It's going to be an online course about how to grow your audience, and it features quotes and lessons and stories from a lot of Podia creators who have been really successful. And it's really cool in that way, in that it's kind of a hybrid between the things that we've learned, working with creators for years, growing our own audiences, and then the things that our creators share that reinforce those ideas. And one of the things that I really, really thought I needed to do was compile every single creator quote we had and categorize them and try to put them into some, because in my head, I was doing it backwards. I was like, okay, I need to see what everybody said and what the advice is and what categories are represented. And then I can put those in the right order.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can try to write a script around those things. And it just blocked me so much.
Because it took so much time.
When I finally sat down and was like, okay, I'm going to write this lesson. It's going to be about this topic. And I don't know which creator clips or if we have any that fit into it.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to write it. And as I was writing, I kept running into, I was like, oh yeah, somebody said something about this.
Yeah.
And I was able to go find that clip and bring it in. And so it's amazing. When you take the brakes off of your brain and just let yourself go, a lot of times, and kind of relax a little bit, your brain does some of that work for you.
Yeah. I was going to say that too. Between drafts, if you even take, I usually tell people to take a day, but if you don't have a day, take, an hour away. But your brain is constantly, once you have something down on paper, your brain is constantly thinking about it. So when you come back to it, it's going to be so much easier.
Yeah.
Because it's thinking behind the scenes, even if you're going out to lunch or something, Well,
and somebody has said something like this before, just about trying to come up with topics and anything that's trying to get the ideas to come.
Yeah.
Ideas follow momentum, and you create momentum when you start making things, when you start writing. And we want it to work the other way. We want to get an idea and for that idea to drive the process. But often it has to work the other way. We have to start doing something.
Yeah.
Just start moving the gears, and then the ideas start to flow and things start coming to us.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question I had for you was, you are a professional writer who no longer experiences writer's block and has a really easy time writing first drafts and stuff like that. No. How many drafts? So, and I think for a lot of writers, they think that the peak, the optimum writing proficiency is being able to write a perfect first draft.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to write it and it's going to be ready to go. How many drafts do you do for your writing?
Well, it depends on the book. The book that's publishing in May took, I think it was 11 drafts.
11?
Yeah, because it's humorous. And so every single draft you do, you layer in more humor, because it doesn't come out humorous the first time through. The one of my YAs that's currently on submission took, I think it was 5 drafts for that one. But,
Five even like
Yeah.
seems like a lot.
Well, when it's 70,000 words. So when you think about having to do, I mean, writing it's tough work. But
What about your, okay, this, I'm throwing you a curveball.
yeah,
What about your newsletter?
my newsletter probably takes 3 drafts.
3?
Yeah.
That's still surprising.
Yeah. Sometimes it only takes 2. It depends on how easily. Well, okay, so I count proofreading, which is like correcting all the grammatical mistakes. I count that as 1 draft.
Well, because you
'Cause I do
don't
that.
proofread without
Yeah.
like maybe adding something
Yeah.
or taking something out or.
Yeah, so I'll do the first draft and then I'll usually do a second draft and then I'll proofread.
Okay.
So,
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. A professional writer has on
there's
a book.
never a first
yeah,
draft that is
it's
sent to people
there's no such thing as I'm going to write this
one time.
first. First time it's going to be perfect right out of the gate. I think that's really helpful. Like, think about how freeing it is to say to yourself, I'm going to write this, and it's, this version of it is never going to see the light of day, but it is the seed for what it could in 3 or 4 or 7 or 11 drafts if you want to.
I don't ever do
we can
that.
talk about,
Yeah, I don't
we
do
can
that
talk
many
about
drafts.
perfectionism and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I am a perfectionist, so you might not want to use my
it's-
number of drafts.
But it's the seed for what will eventually become something excellent. But you don't have to put the pressure on that first draft to be that thing.
Yeah.
So that's a really helpful idea for me. So when it comes to a lot of this is mindset stuff. We've been talking about practicing regularly, finding unique ways to practice. We've been talking about placeholder text and trying to do different, separate them out into separate tasks.
Yeah.
Talking about doing extra drafts, believing in yourself, finding people who will encourage you and affirm your work, maybe doing some of that for yourself. Is there anything else that you can think of that is maybe something practical someone could do to help them if they feel stuck when they sit down to write?
I mean, I have like inspirational quotes and affirmations on my bulletin board where I write, because sometimes, writing is full of rejection and you can get down. And so when you get rejected and you move on to another project, it's a mindset thing where you're just like, why do I do this? So I would say when you've gotten encouragement or just, looking at other places, I have a Maya Angelou quote and a Toni Morrison quote that just inspire me and remind me why I do what I do and what I have to offer the world. So
That's awesome. Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a good tip.
Miss Inspirational speaker.
Yeah, but
No.
but it's not just this. It really can be something that helps you get into the headspace you need to be in
Yeah.
to,
I mean, even something as simple as I can do this,
yeah,
or I can do hard things.
yeah,
Sometimes we get in places where we're like, negativity, I can't do this. This is way too hard.
yeah.
I'm not, so.
Yeah, when I was in that part of my process that it's like, okay, it's time to write an outline and a script and stuff like that. That is something that can help, writing an outline first. If that's
Yeah.
not something you do, especially if you're doing like content,
Yeah.
writing an outline helps a ton.
I do that for all my books. I am a plotter.
So that could have been one of the major, it's a huge help. Can't remember what I was going to say. I started saying something and then I mentioned the outline. Oh, anyways, yeah. So as a part of my process, when I would sit down to write, that's what the internal voice was doing, was like, I don't like this. This is uncomfortable. I hate
yeah.
this. I wish this was over with.
Yeah.
So I don't feel.
See, and it's so funny because as I'm writing, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so alive. This is so great. Like that's the
Yeah.
the thoughts that are in my head. It's great.
See, that's me when I'm editing. When I'm editing video, it's just like,
Yeah. I mean,
I'm-
it's important to love what you do, and
Yeah.
and sometimes like no matter how hard you practice, you might not love writing. You
Mhm.
know, it might just be something that you never you never want. Like I love spending 4 or 5 hours a day writing, but
yeah.
that's hard for some people to even fathom.
But it's true that when you practice something enough and feel like you're good at it,
Mhm.
it starts to feel easier.
Yeah.
So that's where I think just
And then you
like,
can maybe like it.
yeah, you don't have to love it, but if
Mhm.
you, well, what would it mean for your business or for whatever it is you do, for you to like writing, and for you not to feel like every time you sit down to write, you're gonna be stuck. You know,
Mhm. Yeah.
I think that would be really meaningful for a lot of folks.
Mhm.
All right. Well, this was a great discussion. I'm
Yeah.
glad we decided to talk about it. I'm definitely coming away with some fresh ideas and inspiration too. So, yeah. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm going to go ahead and close us out here.
All right.
So, if you want to follow the show, you can listen anywhere you consume podcasts. You can also go to intheboatpodcast.com. And if you want to help out the show, share an episode with somebody. If you watch this live on Facebook or YouTube, you can just share the video with them and say, hey, I just watched this episode about writing and I thought of you because I remember the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago where you were like, oh, I just hate writing so much. And I think you would get a lot out of it. Tell that person about this episode. That would help us out a ton, and it would help that other person. So, Rachel, where can people find you online?
RachelTolson.com, and I'm at Rachel Tolson at all the things.
Yep, and I am at bentolson.com and at Ben Tolson on all the things. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
See you next time. All right. Quick after show today.
Yep.
Went a little bit long. Hold on
Yeah,
just
there's
a
a
second.
lot to say.
Excuse me.
I have my noisy shoes on. I don't know if you can hear them.
No, I don't think it's coming through.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really interesting because for the online course project, there were 15 lessons, and it's different from the regular YouTube videos because the stakes feel a lot higher, and
Yeah.
it's also a collaborative project. So it's not just like I'm writing, but I'm also trying to honor the vision that other people have for the course.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to make sure that I'm accounting for all of the things that we need to say. And I'm talking about something that I'm not necessarily a huge, expert in. And so, so it was really challenging. But now I'm, all of the lessons are written and stuff, and I'm doing different work. And I find myself actually feeling like kind of eager to get back to writing again.
To the regular stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. So it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Chris, thanks for tuning in. Debbie says the Play-Doh metaphor has inspired me for my weekend. That's good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just have an urge to go, like, I don't know if maybe on Amazon they sell one of those kits that has
gosh. That would, when the kids were young, we never kept Play-Doh around because it's so
No.
messy.
and it's like,
I hate mess, and I hate stuff everywhere, and it would get stuck to the table.
yeah.
The times that we had it, and
Yeah, there are
hated
these things that are like kids love, and we just never. It was like, nope, that's off limits
Yep.
because we
the
just
little
couldn't-
rubber
we couldn't
band
handle
things
it.
that they make into bracelets, and nope.
Yeah, fortunately, their friends next door have a bunch of those and donated a whole bin of them to the boys without us knowing about it
Yeah.
until they were all over
Until
our floor.
they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
great.
I know those things are good for kids too, for like motor skills and all of that, but
Yeah.
it's like I can do other things with them for motor skills.
Yeah.
They can learn how to they can take popcorn kernels and put them into the pot where we're cooking popcorn. There's motor skills for you.
Poor kids.
Oh, it's terrible. No, I don't like mess. They have a mom who gets overwhelmed when there are lots and lots of parts and stickiness and,
Hmm.
I remember there being a friend of ours who said they would, whenever there would be like a line of hand marks on their walls,
Yeah.
because their kids would get down from the table and their hands would be sticky and they would just like trail them along the wall and they would paint over it. And I was like, oh, my kids don't get down unless I've already like wiped every sticky thing off their hands.
Well, and yet, like we did our
Our
staircase.
stairway did, but it was more like the dirt and oil from.
So yeah, it wasn't necessarily foodstuffs, but it was like over.
Thanks, Debbie.
Yeah, they are very nice earrings. Yeah, it was like one day, all of a sudden, you look up and you're like, that is years worth of grime
Yeah.
in
They would just trail their
along-
hands
yeah.
up the.
like at about the 2.5 to 3
Yeah.
foot mark. So it's definitely not me. Yeah, we just painted over it.
It's
So,
okay.
Debbie says that she gives herself affirmations in the car mirror,
Mhm.
which is great.
Yeah.
In one of my darker moments, working on this big project. Well, it wasn't just this. It was like I had
It
a
was
lot of things
stuff,
going
yeah.
on, and I one day I was like feeling desperate, and I opened up my journal and I just wrote like affirmations for myself
Yeah.
because I was like, I just need to hear. I
Yeah.
need to see it.
They're
you know.
helpful. They
And
really
it-
are.
And I tell you this all the time, like hearing positive things
Mhm.
about yourself in your own voice is so powerful. Like,
Mhm.
because I think especially I'm not minded this way as much, but I think your inner critic is really strong and loud,
Mhm.
can be. And so like when you're hearing that consistently, it's really important
Yeah.
to counter that with out loud, like vocalized affirmation of yourself so
Yeah.
that you can hear it in your own voice and get used to the sound of it, you know?
Yeah. Agreed.
All right. Well, time to get on with our day. Thanks for spending a little bit of yours with
Yeah.
us, and